Hi everyone. Have you ever wondered what our favorite game has premium tanks for? Obvious question, of course, for silver farming, crew training, experience farming and all that. This is partly true. But don't forget about the most important goal of any tank, even if it's a premium one. This is enjoyable gameplay and positive emotions. For example, if you want to farm silver, what will you choose, ugly STA2 or cool Skoda T56? Obviously the second one, and it makes sense, because you play this game first and foremost to have fun. Unfortunately, many players now forget this, and consider premium tanks purely to silver farming. And in vain. After all, there are some really interesting premium vehicles, which are designed not for farming because of their features, but play them enjoyable and pretty interesting. Exactly about such vehicles we'll talk now. So, let's begin. The first one is a French medium tank, the Bourrasque. Once it was free for passing the Bourrasque challenge, and now it's sometimes sold during different promotions, but you all already know this very well. Let's talk about the tank itself. The first thing I'd like to mention is its awesome gun. No kidding, this is the most powerful gun among all Tier 8 medium tanks. That's because it has a 2-shot clip for 720 damage with only 2 seconds of intra-clip reload. This kind of firepower can be compared to tank destroyers. You might say that it doesn't matter, because the average penetration of basic rounds is very low, and is only 190 millimeters. That's true, but that's exactly the point. To play Bourrasque comfortably and have fun, you should use only premium rounds, which have 240 millimeters of average penetration. This is not very much, but it's more than enough to play comfortably. As for the other gun characteristics, such as accuracy, aiming time, and damage per minute, they are quite mediocre. Except the stabilization is pretty nice. In terms of mobility, this tank is also very good. I would say it's almost like a light tank. And of course, excellent camouflage, and a total lack of armor, which makes sense. The next is another Frenchman, this time wheeled EBR-75. I'm sure many players dream to get this tank, and for a reason. After all, this is probably the best light tank at Tier 8. It has excellent mobility, like any other wheeled vehicle, excellent maneuverability, and also excellent camouflage. With the right choice of equipment, this tank can work wonders on a battlefield, especially on such maps as Prohorovka or Malinovka. Among the minuses, quite a weak gun. Make at least 1000 average damage on account is not easy, let alone higher results. Low armor penetration, low damage per shot, low damage per minute, poor accuracy and all that. Only stabilization of this tank is a pretty strange thing. It seems bad, but shells often hit a target even when you're driving at maximum speed. This is a hidden parameter that is inherent in all wheeled tanks, as far as I know. In terms of armor, everything is not as simple as it may seem at first glance. There is no armor, this is a fact. But there are big wheels, which very often magically absorb shells of even most powerful guns. It's a strange, and quite annoying thing. In summary, the EBR-75 is a great and unique tank, which is designed purely for fun and enjoyment, and silver farming is its secondary task, which only very experienced players will cope with well. The third one is American medium tank, T-26E4 Super Pershing. Though it's hard to describe it as a medium tank, it's more a hybrid of a heavy and a medium tank, which can perform both of these roles on a battlefield. After all, its frontal armor is incredible. The hull and turret are protected by heavy plates. As a result, the hull forehead armor is about 230 millimeters, and about 300 millimeters in the turret forehead respectively. Not all Tier 8 heavy tanks can boast such armor. Of course, there are vulnerabilities and weak spots where there is almost no armor, but every tank has them, so it's not a problem. In addition to that, after the last upgrade, the T-26E4 have pretty nice mobility, especially if you use a turbocharger. Sure, it's slower than some Bourrasque or Progetto 46 for example, but still. As for the gun, it's normal gun for a medium Tier 8 tank. 240 damage per shot and 2200 damage per minute. The other characteristics are also not remarkable. But the important thing is the average penetration. The basic rounds have 202 mm. This is not bad, but we shouldn't forget that the T-26E4, due to its features, can often find itself in firefights against heavy tanks face to face, and in such situations this penetration is no longer enough. Therefore you often have to use premium rounds with 258 mm armor penetration. That's why this tank is not the best one to silver farming. Because if you want to really feel his strength and power, you'll have to pay for it. The fourth is the Soviet Grandad, IS-6. This is a very old tank, and one of the first Soviet premium tanks. But despite its impressive age, this tank has not lost its relevance at all. I recently made a video about this. Okay, let's talk about the tank itself. First of all, it's worth to note its amazing armor. And not only the forehead, the sides armor is also very nice. If you compare the IS-6 armor with its standard counterpart, namely the IS-3, we can conclude that the armor of the premium tank is much stronger. Plus we shouldn't forget that IS-6 has limited matchmaking, and you won't be playing battles with tier 10 tanks. Also, don't forget about its gun, which is also decent in my opinion. Damage per shot is 390, this will not surprise anyone nowadays. But the damage per minute can be boosted to 2500. Of course it's not as good as some Karnar 1, but compared to other tier 8 heavies it's a pretty good figure. The only minus, which really often annoys, is not the best gun depression, which is 6 degrees. Well, as for armor penetration, a lot of players including my viewers say that the basic shell's penetration of 196 mm is very low. Yes, it is. As a result, to realize the potential of this tank you should use only gold shells, which have 225 average penetration. This is also not much, but considering the fact that you will not play against 10 tiers, it's enough in most cases, except for fights against some E75 face to face, but this happens very rarely. I would also like to note that everything that was said about IS-6 can also be applied to the 112, because they are very similar. And last but not least is the American M6A2E1, or a Goose, as it is called in my country. I'm sure many of you are surprised to see this tank here, and certainly you disagree with the fact that this tank is good. But don't forget that good and overpowered are two different things. For example, some Skoda T56 is obviously overpowered and imbalanced, and it should be nerfed. And the M6A2E1, though it doesn't have any outstanding features compared to the new premium tanks, but it's still a very interesting and unique tank. Let me explain why. First, it has a limited matchmaking. Second, the frontal armor of this tank is 250 mm, and doesn't have any clear weaknesses, except for the hatch of course. These two factors make the gameplay of this tank interesting and unique. Well, as you may have guessed, the weak point of this tank is the gun, namely low penetration of basic shells, and to make playing this tank comfortable, you have to use premium shells, as well as on any other tank in this list. As you have already realized, the main feature of each tank on this list is the low penetration of basic shells, but very powerful, or unique other characteristics, which makes all those tanks great for fun, but terrible for silver farming. I'd also like to mention such tanks as the Chrysler GF, the T-34-3, and even to some extent the KV-5. These tanks didn't make the main list, but they definitely deserve your attention. Well, thank you for watching this video to the end. I hope you found it useful. It's time to say goodbye. Good luck to everyone, and remember, don't play World of Tanks.